Today on NewsWatch, the leader of France declares war against the Islamic State. See how the nation plans to crack down on Islamic sleeper cells. Plus, Russian officials announced what brought down the Russian passenger plane that crashed over Egypt. We'll bring you the details. And standing up to ISIS will show you how a group of Kurdish warriors are battling the terror group. Thanks so much for joining us for CBN NewsWatch. I'm Ephraim Graham. France works to return to normal today after the terror attack that killed at least 129 people. Meanwhile, the country's leader, Francois Hollande, is declaring war against ISIS. The country carried out a new round of airstrikes today in Syria. Gary Lane has more now from France.
Addressing a joint session of Parliament, French President Hollande said his country is at war. He's extending a state of emergency for another 3 months and pledges to continue the nationwide crackdown on Islamic sleeper cells, like the one responsible for last Friday's horrific attack in Paris. He also wants to strip citizenship from any Frenchman involved in terrorism, so-called homegrown terrorists. The Eiffel Tower is lit once again, this time in the French tricolors. That wasn't the case over the weekend. For 3 nights it went dark, almost a depiction of the darkness that had descended on the City of Light. Parisians are struggling to return to normal, and they can't help wondering if their government has a long-term strategy to defeat Islamic terrorism once and for all. This Parisian told us he's concerned about how the sweeping security crackdown may affect innocent citizens.
What I fear is the consequences of all that on our lifestyle, on the way safety will be enforced in our country, in our countries.
For now, it means warrantless searches and wiretaps for suspected terrorists, and perhaps more police on the streets and routine security checks. Meanwhile, in Syria Sunday night, France dropped 20 bombs on the ISIS capital of Raqqa. While the French termed it a massive response, some military experts say that alone will not deter the Islamic State from continuing its holy war against the West. CBN News told you late last summer that ISIS warned it had sent 4,000 jihadists to infiltrate the ranks of the thousands of migrants that poured into Europe each day. This Muslim migrant in Sweden feared the Swedes weren't doing enough to protect the country from potential terrorists.
Before letting them settle here, the Swedish government should check Facebook and use other means to determine if these refugees were fighters in Syria or Iraq.
One likely result of this terrorist attack is that some European borders may remain closed, especially to the masses of Middle Eastern migrants that are sweeping in. But for France, a country with a large and easily radicalized youthful Muslim population, the latest measures may be too little, too late. Gary Lane, CBN News, Paris.
Islamic State terrorists are vowing to strike Washington, D.C., saying countries taking part in airstrikes against Syria will suffer the same fate as Paris. The threats were made in a new video posted on a site used by ISIS. The nearly 12-minute video begins with news footage of the aftermath of the Paris attacks. It calls on Muslims in France to, quote, ignite and kill soldiers and tyrants. One fighter in the video says, "We swear that we will strike America at its center in Washington." CIA Director John Brennan said he would be surprised if the group doesn't have more attacks planned. Since the attacks of September 11, 2001, Lieutenant General Michael Flynn has fought a covert war against Islamic terrorist groups. In 2012, President Obama appointed him to lead the Defense Intelligence Agency. But 2 years later, he was forced out, partly because he was unwilling to toe the White House line that Islamic extremism was on the decline. In the wake of the Paris attacks, the now retired general says the president needs to get real about the threats America and the world face. George Thomas has this story.
Retired General Michael Flynn has seen the face of radical Islam up close.
I will tell you, strategically, they are very savvy, they're very cunning, and they have the willingness to win.
General Flynn was President Obama's top man at the Defense Intelligence Agency.
Before that, the general served as Director of Intelligence for the Joint Special Operations Command, a shadowy arm of the government that tracks and eliminates terrorists around the world. The same unit, by the way, was responsible for the Commander raid that killed Osama bin Laden.
For the better half of a decade, Flynn has interrogated hundreds of Taliban, Al-Qaeda, and other terrorists.
The strategic leaders, they're not 25-year-old kids. These are like people that are, I would say, between the age of like 45 and 55, who are engineers, doctors, very intelligent. They should have better things to do, but they have this ingrained belief system, this ideology that they have, and they mean to not only establish the caliphate, but dominate the world.
He says the Paris attacks serve as a reminder that the threat is unlikely to fade, and the sooner we understand that, the better.
So we have to get real, and this war that we are in, whether we like it or not, whether we accept the fact that we're in it or not, it is here in front of us.
On Monday, President Obama called the terror attacks in Paris a setback in the fight against ISIS, but is unwilling to send troops to Syria.
It is not just my view, but the view of my closest military and civilian advisors, that would be a mistake.
Flynn sees the real mistake as a White House that continues to underestimate the enemy and their religious ambitions. The general says Obama cannot win this war if he can't even name the enemy.
They see themselves as a component of Islam. This is a political ideology based on a religion. Had we lost World War II to the Nazis, we'd be praying at the altar of Nazism today.
Flynn believes it's time the president and the world wake up, because what happened in Paris is the new norm, and we will see more of it.
This administration and the people that are around the president are poorly advising him on the kinds of things that we are facing, the type of enemy that we are facing.
In August 2014, Flynn was forced out of his job at the Defense Intelligence Agency for, among other things, his position that the Islamic terrorist threat was growing around the world and not receding like the administration wanted the public to believe.
And sadly, when the president says something, everybody else that's in our government has to sort of toe the line. Otherwise, you've got to leave the government, because if you can't toe the line, you're out. You know, and you're looking at a guy that's out.
A registered Democrat, Flynn worries the Paris attacks are only fueling ISIS's recruiting and funding operations. In under 3 weeks, General ISIS has managed to blow up a Russian airliner, send suicide bombers into Lebanon, Baghdad, and now Paris. What does that tell you about their ambitions outside of Syria and Iraq?
Yeah, their ambitions are high. They believe they are winning. They are recruiting every time they do these operations. So all these operations that you see, they're all highly successful in their eyes. It allows them to recruit more. It shows that they can actually win against the West, specifically the United States.
4 years ago, the Islamic State did not exist. Now it controls vast swaths of Syria and Iraq, and 35 terror groups around the world have pledged allegiance to its leader, Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi. Flynn says we owe it to future generations to put a stop to this evil.
We've got to quit kidding ourselves, and the President of the United States needs to recognize that the absolutely failed policy that has been implemented by this administration to do anything about this is not absolutely, it's not achieving the mission.
George Thomas, CBN News.
U.S. lawmakers are calling on the federal government to limit or halt the admission of Syrian refugees into the U.S. This comes after a Syrian passport was found near the body of one of the Paris attackers. More than a dozen state governors say they will not admit any more Syrian refugees into their states. Others are demanding a breakdown of the vetting process refugees undergo before they're allowed into the country. Meanwhile, some congressional Republicans are threatening to use critical spending legislation to limit the president's plan of bringing in 10,000 more Syrian refugees to the U.S. during this budget year. Russia's Federal Security Service is offering $50 million for information that leads to the arrest of who is to blame in the downing of a passenger plane over Egypt. And President Vladimir Putin vows to hunt down those responsible. This comes after the country's own investigation confirms previous theories a bomb is to blame for the Russian airliner crashing. Russian security leaders say a homemade bomb placed on board caused the plane to break up in the air. All 224 people on board were killed. Police have released photos of a suspect in the deadly shooting of a pregnant wife of an Indianapolis pastor. The grainy surveillance photos do not show the suspect's face. They were captured from a home surveillance video. Police say Amanda Blackburn was shot and killed during a robbery at her home.
We know who killed, or at least we have a picture of him, we don't know the name. And this person was seen by a number of people going on the street, and also our timelines in place that puts him there at the time of the murder.
More than 2,000 people attended a memorial Sunday for Blackburn, whose unborn baby also died in that shooting. Amanda Blackburn leaves behind her husband, Davey, and their 15-month-old son. Coming up, the line where the free world ends and ISIS begins. We'll take you to the battle zone in Iraq to meet the Kurdish warriors known as the Peshmerga. Last week, Kurdish warriors liberated a strategic city in northern Iraq from the hands of ISIS terrorists, cutting off an important supply route for the Islamic radicals. The attack is just the latest example of how the Kurds have been fighting ISIS. CBN News recently went to the front lines of the battle for a rare look at the territory the Peshmerga have already taken back from the Islamic terrorists. Here's Chris Mitchell now from Kurdistan.
General Karzan of the Kurdish military took CBN News to the front lines. We crossed the fabled Euphrates River and passed the Mosul Dam. 1 year ago, ISIS captured the dam and threatened Iraq with an ecological catastrophe. Destroying the dam would have sent a 60-foot wall of water all the way to Baghdad, killing as many as 500,000 people. The Peshmerga took back the dam with the help of U.S. airstrikes. On the way, Karzan told us about ISIS.
They are like fire. They're not against a specific ethnic people or religion. They're against everything.
We passed villagers showing support for the military. Without the Peshmerga, their village would be overrun by ISIS.
They're very glad to live with the Kurds and under the control of the Kurds.
We go through several checkpoints in territory once contested by the Islamic State and the Peshmerga.
This is the most dangerous place for all of us and for ISIS. These places that you see weren't captured easily.
They take us up to their base, but caution us not to take any video inside. This is the front lines between ISIS and Peshmerga. ISIS fighters are just about 500 meters away from this position. And a lot of people say this is a key sector because it controls the Mosul Dam. But more than that, many people say this is the battle line, the fault line between the free world and ISIS.
These villages that you see belong to ISIS.
Karzan commands this forward base.
They believe that this is the line of the free world. This is why when ISIS comes to fight against the Peshmerga, they believe that they're crossing the border into Europe.
Soon after we arrive, ISIS fires 2 mortars toward another Kurdish position.
This is the only way they can show they're still active.
Back at regional headquarters, we spoke with Major General Bajat Arab.
Don't forget, the Peshmerga right now are fighting for the sake of the whole free world. If you wanted to take a look at the whole world, no one stands against ISIS. Look at what happened to the Iraqi army. No one fought ISIS, only the Peshmerga.
He painted a sobering picture of ISIS.
If the other people in the world want to know or see how dangerous ISIS is, let them come to Mosul, see what happened to the Yazidis and Christians.
He blamed the Baghdad government for the lack of advanced weapons they need to fight ISIS. He described a dismal picture of how they need to maintain their weapons.
Sometimes we have to repair one weapon with another. This is how we've used the old weapons to fight against ISIS.
Despite those old weapons, retired U.S. General Jay Garner says the Kurds are taking the battle to ISIS.
The only people that are successfully fighting ISIS is the Kurdish Peshmerga. You got a country here of 4.5, 5 million people that are totally pro-American, more so than we're pro-American. They're in one of the most strategic locations in the world, in the Middle East for us. To their east is our enemy Iran, to the south is our enemy Shia Iraq, to the west is our enemy Syria, and to the north is what we call a NATO ally, Turkey.
Garner says Kurdistan is a military man's dream.
You're at a perfect place where you could strike out of there at any of your enemies, plus you got support in the north with an ally.
General Arab added how grateful he was to the U.S.
We'd love to tell the American people that the Kurds are the only true friends they have in this area.
The Peshmerga say a decisive factor in the battle against ISIS has been U.S. airstrikes. But they say with more arms, ammunition, and heavy weapons, they can make even more advances against the Islamic State. Chris Mitchell, CBN News, on the front lines with the Kurdish Peshmerga.
And next, France has been under attack for a long time already. We'll take you to the Muslim neighborhoods where white people get attacked simply because of the color of their skin. Imagine feeling threatened walking on the streets of your own city. In parts of France, that scenario is all too real. CBN News has reported for years about the growing number of attacks on the native French in territory controlled by Muslims. Dale Hurd brings us this shocking story now from Paris.
White French being beaten up by predominantly Muslim immigrant gangs. Violent crime can happen anywhere and to anyone, and for many reasons. But in parts of France, it has become especially dangerous to be white.
There are parts of France where the native French are no longer welcome. Muslim immigrants consider it their territory, and whites enter at their own risk.
The French call them sensitive urban zones. They're no-go zones where the police don't enter or don't enforce the law. They're little Muslim caliphates inside the borders of France.
And it's like that because these parts of the country are in the hands of drug traffickers, gangs, and imams.
This French report says almost 1 in 5 Frenchmen have been victims of racist insults or worse. A few cases have even gone to trial.
Some of those who launch racist attacks on whites use Islam as the reason they do it. They may not even speak Arabic, but they still use Islam as a flag.
Tariq Yildiz, a French sociologist, has written the book Anti-White Racism. Yildiz is not native French, but is the son of Turkish immigrants.
My book is viewed as politically incorrect and breaks a taboo, the idea that immigrants could oppress whites.
It's a reality for this Frenchman named Max. He's been attacked more than once by immigrants and still has a bruise under one eye from the latest attack. Max sports an American accent after living in the U.S., but he's French and has joined Generation Identitaire, a youth movement united around the defense of French culture and white French identity.
Well, basically, we're a youth movement that aims to promote, preserve, and protect our local, national, and European identities.
This video shows Generation Identitaire members training for self-defense.
Well, we encourage all our members and militants to keep a certain level of physical fitness. Self-defense is a part of it, obviously.
As the French left's grand experiment in multiculturalism goes up in flames, some quarters of French society are dividing into tribalism and ethnic identity. Pierre Cassen and Christine Tesson are anti-Islamization activists.
The French people are increasingly living in fear. They fear the imposition of Islamic law and the organized violence against any French person, including the police.
More and more Islamists threaten riots, assault, and try to impose Sharia. They attack the police. The Republic is in danger.
This French news report shows Generation Identitaire members out on a security patrol. Yildiz says by ignoring the problem of immigrant attacks on whites, the French establishment and media are only helping to ensure that more whites will seek out groups like Generation Identitaire for protection.
If the state will not punish these people and the media will not talk about it, the victims will get increasingly frustrated and could become racist, and then we will have a confrontation.
Not only is the problem being ignored, the French left and many mayors actively promote the growth and spread of sectarian Islam, for good reason. Muslims have become an important constituency of the left. 90% voted for Socialist President Hollande in the last election. Former Muslim Pascal Halout wanted to show us the mosque in the Paris district of Barbès that the mayor's office is paying to renovate. The name of the mosque is in Arabic, so perhaps the French don't realize they're paying to renovate a mosque named Conquest.
So this is like another country inside France, yeah?
Yeah, the liberalization or Balkanization of France is beginning already with the help of the state of France.
Lebanon. It's a word some use to describe France's future as a nation divided and engulfed in sectarian conflict. Hilout believes, as do many experts, that the French left's experiment with Islam is going to backfire badly.
The French feel outnumbered, outmaneuvered, and in the minority. If things continue at this rate, we will have the same situation as in Kosovo or Lebanon, civil war.
Dale Hurd, CBN News, Paris.
Thanks, Dale, for the eye-opening report. Stay with us. We're coming right back. It is time now for your Tuesday Tweetable. Consider this: even your worst day works for your good when you place it in the hands of the Master who promises to work it out. And remember, he did not call you to understand all things, but he did call you to trust him in all things. And with that, make this a terrific Tuesday. That is going to do it for this edition of CBN NewsWatch. Remember, you can find more of our exclusive coverage of the issues you care most about at cbnnews.com. We would love to hear what you think about the stories you've seen here today. You can do that online as well. Hit us up on Facebook and Twitter. We'll see you right back here next time. Once again, make this a terrific Tuesday.